And good evening, everyone. This is your host, Jared Michael, with another episode of Make That Bloody Movie with Coffee. And tonight we have a special guest. He's an international director and producer. His name is Martin Nuza. How do I say your last name? Nuza? Nuza is correct?
Nuza,
yes.
yes.
Nuzi. And he's been around the world, done a lot of films. He's very exciting, and dynamic. So tonight, he's our special guest. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, what he's been up to, and what's his favorite coffee that he's drinking for the night, ladies and gentlemen, and how he likes his coffee. All right, Martin, take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually having a cappuccino now with extra cream. Nice and warm.
Awesome.
That's how I like the coffee. And 2 teaspoons of sugar.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Shaken, not stirred?
Shaken, not stirred. Excellent.
Okay, so go ahead, Martin. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I started my career 30 years ago. And one of the first projects I wrote was actually a short film, which I later produced and directed.
Okay.
And that project was called The Zombie's Revenge.
Ooh.
And it won a certain amount of prizes back in the day. Originally, yes, so your audience is aware, I am from Gibraltar. That's a British colony in the south of Spain in Europe.
Wow. Okay.
And we have both the North African continent to one side and we have Spain on the other side. So we're smack in the middle between Africa and Spain and Europe.
Okay.
And after I wrote and directed the Zombie's Revenge short film, I later began writing actually a novel called Promises of the Mason Ordeal. It's over 500 pages long, and that was published in England, in the United Kingdom, by Minerva Press in London.
Okay.
After that one, I wrote the second novel, which is Emily's Harrowing Story, also published in England, in London. And that one was nearly 700 pages, a bit longer than the other one.
Wow.
And I've been writing ever since, non-stop writing scripts and screenplays. And then I began to actually start producing more as I was writing more elaborate stories. And I started to do a documentary, a Second World War documentary called Operation Felix, about the German planned invasion to capture Gibraltar during the Second World War. And for that, we had to go to Germany to do the research for that documentary, going through the military archives, the German military archives, and in Berlin. And so we shot in Germany, France, Spain, and Gibraltar. And that documentary was well received. It was shown in the History Channel, National Geographic, internationally, all over Europe. And after that one, I also produced and directed the second documentary, which was Operation Tracer, and also based during the Second World War. If Operation Felix had been a success, then the British had a contingency plan to have 6 British men entombed inside the Rock of Gibraltar, inside a special chamber, where they would literally have a suicide mission of spying on the Germans and radioing London with their findings every day, every evening. And of course, they knew that if they were captured, they would be shot on the spot as spies. For that documentary, I had to get the help of the last remaining survivor, Dr. Bruce Cooper, who was in England at the time. And one of my associates, Jim Crone, actually helped me to get Dr. Cooper over to Gibraltar, where we interviewed him for 3 consecutive days. So his input joined all the dots that we were missing to make the script for that second documentary.
Wow.
Apart from the documentary, then I moved over to producing more feature films. One of my latest feature films, which we shot last year in 2019, we actually shot in Mumbai, in India, and in England. It was called Scotland. That was a relatively low budget film. It came under $500,000 US, and it has won over 65 international awards, and it was also selected for the first round of the Oscars of this year, of the 92nd Academy Awards in Los Angeles.
Wow, congratulations.
The film is basically based on a true story about a girl who goes from Scotland to Mumbai on a personal matter with her father, and she gets gang raped. And of course, the system in India is very primitive compared to our developed countries. And cut a long story short, the girl is raped, left for dead. The justice system, unfortunately, very corrupt because of higher powers in place. The members of the gang rape were released, and the girl was left to fend for herself. So what the father did was he established a plan to seek revenge and go after the 4 boys and kill them, in a desperate attempt to avenge the reputation of her daughter. And it's a very emotional story, very heartbreaking, and one I really recommend your viewers to watch, Scotland. Another feature film we shot last year was also shot in Europe, in Hungary, called The Shepherd. That was won over 25 international awards so far. It's also based on a true story, and it's set during the Second World War. It's basically the life of a shepherd in Hungary who lives an ordinary, very quiet life, although Hungary is occupied by the Nazis. And one day he gets a call, or he gets invaded. His farm gets invaded by a group of Germans, because they know that there are a group of Jewish people hiding nearby. And of course, we later find out that the shepherd is actually the one hiding them. And the climax of that story is that he has to decide between sacrificing his own life or giving away the location of the Jewish family he's hiding. So it's a very emotional story, that one too.
Wow. I had a question. Well, actually, as you know, I have 5 questions that I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
That is what you've just laid out for everybody, as well as for me. That sounds like quite a bit of an adventure, some of the stories you've written based on truth and how it express, what you've seen and what you've researched. And I have to say, it's very impressive, Martin. 65 film festival awards you've won, as well as the other film. You got 35. That's an amazing accomplishment. And I just wanted to say that I will definitely take a look at those films when they're ready to come out, and you'll let me know with my cup of coffee. And I'm just admired by your tenacity and your creativity and your ability to be a director and a producer, and what you have accomplished so far in your life. Some of the questions I wanted to ask you, I know you've I send the questions to you so you can, kind of take a look at what I'm going to say. My first question is, what are the biggest fears of those in your position, would you say?
Well, it's interesting. There are many fears that need to be overcome in order to make a film project successful. The biggest fear, as far as I'm concerned, is of course once a film is in the can and everything's a wrap and you've got everything tied down correctly, that the film becomes a flop at the end of the day. And that's a fear that most filmmakers always have in the back of the mind, because any person can have a strong vision or their own perspective on where the story will lead the audience. But the audience is also, they also have their own vision of what they want to see. And if what they see is not what they anticipated, then they automatically, it's a bad review, they didn't like it, word of mouth, and one thing leads to another, and you might end up with a flop, which is, of course, one of the biggest fears in any producer's minds, because no one wants to have a flop in the slate of films. So that's my biggest fear. I am fortunate that out of all the projects I've undertaken, nearly 20 projects to date,
wow,
I've never had a flop. I have been very fortunate that my vision has always been projected in a manner that is well respected by everyone who sees it. And but in the back of my mind, it's always there. And I hope that day never comes.
Wow, that's really impressive. That's I guess for any young filmmaker listening to that about Martin, I think that's a big shoes to fill in, where it's almost like a baseball player going up to bat and hitting home runs every time, and then in the back of his mind is thinking he's going to get a strike, or there'll be that one strike. It's amazing that you haven't, and I hope you continue with your streak. And I have to say that's very impressive, Martin.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm working on many other projects which are also very interesting. I can share one that I'm sure that will be very interesting to your viewers,
okay,
your audience.
Okay.
And it's basically about the cruise industry.
Oh, okay.
There's a particular project which I've been working on for some time now, and it's called The Unforgettable Cruise, subtitled Snatched.
Oh.
Basically, I'm going to tell you a little background of this. It won't take that long. In 2018, I was watching a documentary in YouTube, in fact, about a girl that went missing on a cruise ship. She was doing an Alaskan cruise, and for some reason, she never finished the cruise. She wasn't found. She was nowhere to be found on the ship. Her father, Mr. Kendall Carver, he began to investigate the whereabouts of where his daughter could be. No one in the ship knew. It was all a big mystery. After many weeks of frustration, and you put yourself in his shoes, not knowing where your daughter is, he got the services of a private investigator, his lawyers involved.
Right.
And cut a long story short, it was relieved. It was actually realized that on the second day of the cruise, the daughter went missing. And because the cabin attendant knew that the daughter never stepped in the cabin after the second day.
Wow.
And this sparked, because I'm always looking out for the uniqueness of a story, something that never been told.
Uh-huh.
And this sparked my interest. So I got in contact with Mr. Carver, and we established a good relationship for many months. After that, we had many Skype conferences, video conferences, and exchanged many emails. And he helped me with my research to make a feature film based on missing persons. Because the amount of time I spent researching, I realized that there are so many cases of missing persons, be it either passenger or a crew member, that actually goes missing on board cruise liners around the world, that it's shocking. And not only that, the amount of crimes, sexual crimes, misdemeanors and so forth that happen on board cruise liners skyrocket. So I'm sure there must be some reason why this happens. Kendall Carver, he established in America the International Cruise Victims Organization. And it's basically a site where everyone who's had issues on a cruise ship, either personal, been attacked, or anything's happened to them, or a family member has been missing, never been found, it's all logged into this site. And what Mr. Kendall Carver wanted to do, was change the legislation so it's more proactive to help the passenger and the crew members. Because one of the main reasons why all this is happening is because, let's say hypothetically, you are boarding a cruise in Florida, in the States. Well, the second you step foot into the actual ship, you are no longer in the jurisdiction of the States. You are at the mercy of the flag and the registration country of that vessel.
Wow.
Many of these vessels are registered in other countries, not in the States, like, for example, Bermuda, Malta, wherever they may be in the world. And of course, the laws are different than in the States when it comes to those countries. And a lot of the vetting also for some of the crew members are also rushed very quickly in some cases. Mainly to rush someone because there's been a last minute a call and they need an assistant for someone in the ship within the next 12 hours. So what happened here is very simple. I wrote a fiction story based on the reality of the cases that actually happened on many cruise ships, and created a fictitious story which is an action-packed thriller suspense mystery.
Wow.
And when I finished the script, which took me about 3 months to write, I sent it to Kendall, to Mr. Carver. He wrote it, and during one of our many Skype conversations, video conferences, when I called him up one day, he was in tears because he had just finished reading it. And because I wrote the main character, which does actually reminded him about his daughter, of what could have happened to his daughter, and it just brought back so many bad memories to him, because in reality he never really knew what happened to her, and this could have been a scenario of what could have happened to her, which of course didn't end very well for the character of the story. Unfortunately, Kendall passed away in December last year, 2019, and he never really understood what really happened to his daughter. So he passed away without having that question answered.
Wow.
So that's another story I'm currently developing now, and hopefully, if with any luck, it should be should be produced within next year.
I believe it will, and it sounds very fascinating and very interesting. And I would love to know because I know it sounds like there's twists and turns to this story, and there's a interesting end to it. So
there is, and of course it answers it. Well, it actually asks many questions that ring true to many people, family members who have actually lost family members on board the cruise ships.
I see. I have another.
So it's yes, please continue.
Thank you, Mario. My other question was, because I wanted to ask you, what was the last big decision you made that you, in hindsight, felt was the wrong decision?
Well, 13 years ago, 2007, was undertaking it was a short film at the time I was doing. I got my friend, who I thought at the time was my friend, a good friend of mine who had been a friend since until that day, to actually give him a chance to further his career by giving him the reins to direct that particular project. The project was called Sui Cadere, and it was shot in 3 days in Spain. Unfortunately, he used his friendship to further. Well, he wanted to further his career, but in a different way. He used my friendship to establish himself further in a more rapid pace, without realizing that the way he wanted to take that particular story was by crushing me to my knees. So he used my friendship wrongly. So that was, to date, one of the worst decisions I ever made.
So wait, let me get this straight, Martin. Let me understand this. You're telling me you gave your friend the opportunity to direct this movie, and he used it to try to crush you?
Yes. He used it to try and crush me in more than one way. There's a lot of things in play here when we have to put this into perspective.
Wow.
He thought that because he was going to direct, and he did direct it at the end of the day, that he could have carte blanche to do anything else he wanted.
Oh, wow.
And of course, I wasn't very happy with the way he directed it. But nevertheless, I backed him up. I made sure that he was still the director, and he had my full support 100% for whatever he wanted to make sure that his career progressed. But of course, I later found out that he was behind my back telling other people in the industry, how he wanted to further his career. But because the other people was mentioning, no, you are with Martin, you have to respect Martin. And he just said, no, Martin's my friend, he won't mind. Cut a long story short, he stabbed me in the back.
Wow.
Not physically, but mentally.
Right.
And he really destroyed that film, and he destroyed himself. Because unfortunately for him, because he didn't heed to my advice, he just made a fool of himself, destroyed the production costs, which I incurred, which was over $35,000 for that film, and because the film unfortunately never got anywhere.
Wow.
All because he wanted to go the extra mile for his own benefit.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Martin.
I'm even sorry, because I thought until that day he was a very good friend, because I had helped him a lot until then.
Well, I will say this, Martin, and this is something I've been through that myself as a young filmmaker. I've been stabbed too by a friend of mine who tried to crush me with certain people, very similar to you. And one thing I've learned through this journey as a independent filmmaker and a visionary on my side, I've learned that there are going to be people who would try to do that. And then life tends to happen like that. But there will be people you will meet that are positive, and they believe in you, and they believe in what you're doing, and who see the bigger picture rather than thinking about themselves, and will work with you. So my advice to you, if you don't mind, always keep an open mind, and to not disregard certain people who come to you for help and certain people who may need your help. I know your friend left a bad taste in your mouth, but that's life sometimes. But doesn't mean that you won't meet better people. Not to take away from him.
I appreciate your feedback about that. And yes, he did leave a bad taste in my mouth. That was back in 2007, 13 years ago. But I have learned from that, and I still am my own self. I haven't changed.
Oh, okay.
And I still look out for everyone who is involved in my projects.
Okay.
And everyone who is involved in other projects that I'm involved in. And, anyone that you can ask about me will say the same thing. I always look out for the entire cast and crew, because without them, there is no project.
That is correct.
And that's why many people don't realize.
All right, hold on.
Just because
hold on.
because you are yes, sorry.
Just hold on 1 second. All right. Stop the recording.